is the Flex Network. Flex on everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Flex Network. I'm your host, Flex Shane. You can follow me on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. Today, I'm joined, of course, by Mike Dickinson. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike_Dickinson. Mike, crazy week. How the hell are you doing, brother?
I'm great. We were 70 degrees on Monday, and we're back in snow today. So I had to break out the off-season beanie. So we're in off-season mode. Let's get ready to roll.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, you Americans, you guys call these hats beanies. They're called toques, man. They're called toques. You'd think the experts in Canada would be able to. Yeah, we call them toques up here. You never heard that term before?
No, I think that sounds marginally offensive to some people.
I love that. You know what's also marginally offensive, Mike? The fact that Brandon decided not to join us on the show today.
You can strike marginally from that. It's blatantly offensive.
Yeah, it's blatantly
downright disrespectful, if you ask me.
Listen, he was so broken up about the fact that the Seahawks traded away his beloved Russell Wilson that he just couldn't get out of bed today. He just said, "Look, guys, I'm depressed. I can't do it." No, that's not true. Brandon was tilting. He wanted to have a podcast like immediately to talk about it, but he is off. He's I think he's in Chicago today, or he's off traveling playing hockey this week in a tournament. So there you go.
Yeah, but Brandon, don't worry. We will talk about it, and as promised, I will lay disrespect and shame on Pete Carroll's name. Don't you worry.
There you go. So speaking of Brandon, Flex Matt is chiming in here, asking what the hell I'm wearing. He's actually saying, "What the fuck am I wearing?" Look, Matt, the fact that you are a Seattle Seahawks fan, super fan, and that you are also barely able to get out of bed, I'm trying to channel my inner Matt. But no, the reality is I'm hopped up on cough medicine right now. I probably have giant bags under my eyes, so I'm trying to struggle to get through this. So we're rocking the shades, you know. I'm trying to show homage to my boy Flex Matt. So that's why we're rocking the shades today. And we're wearing the Flex Network orange, man. You gotta rock it. You gotta rock it hard. So look, Mike, there's so much to talk about. It's one of these things where like the NFL news cycle is so quick that because we only do one show a week, there's just so much news that came down. But I mean, look, we got to talk about the massive, really quarterback transitions, signings, all that fun stuff that happened this week. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with Ron?
Yeah,
level of
we
surprise.
can start with that.
Level of surprise, like 3 that he stayed?
I don't know. I'm more in the 5. I was kind of 50-50 as to whether or not he was going to retire or come back. It's interesting that he signed that massive deal, reported deal. I don't know the details have actually been leaked yet. If it's as reported, it's a 4-year, $200 million deal, which is $50 million a year. Green Bay was in a treacherous cap situation. Like, it was going to be difficult for them to sign their rookie class. They were in such bad shape. So I'm interested to see how the entire deal shakes out. How much of it is signing bonus? How much the cap hit actually is this year? I think really what they wanted was they wanted to try to work out a deal with Davante Adams. They didn't know if they were going to be able to get it done. So probably the way this is going to look is going to be a lot of signing bonus. It's going to be backloaded in the 3rd and 4th year that Green Bay can get out of if they want to. Davante will be tagged. And then, you know, if they do well this year, or if somebody looks at Aaron Rodgers the wrong way in a press conference and he wants to roll, then he can get out from under and you know, and they can let Davante walk in the offseason. I think, and we'll talk about, when we talk about the franchise tags, we'll talk about this. I don't know if they're going to sign Davante to a long-term deal, because I don't know if they can. You look at what happened in New Orleans and the way that they, you know, basically mortgage the future on a credit card, and eventually you got to pay that credit card bill, and they're in a rough spot now. They kept rolling it. They kept, you know, pushing it down the road with Breeze's contract situation. They tried to lock up Thomas, Kamara, all those guys, and they're in bad shape now. So I don't know if Green Bay is going to do that. I think they're kind of hedging here. You know, we got one good year left in us. They're probably not going to bring MVS back. You know, let's roll with what we got and let's see what we can get.
Yeah, well, so MVS is a unrestricted free agent. Alan Lazard is a restricted free agent, so he'll probably be back. I'm not sure if they've given him a tender yet or anything like that, but he's restricted, so he's probably going to be coming back. I think they have probably a 2 to 3 year window, and they said, look, Rodgers, like, there's pretty much like this mass exodus of any talented quarterback in the NFC. You got to come back. We're in the NFC North. Like, we can dominate again. Like, we already established you own the Chicago Bears. That's fine. Now let's just own the NFC. So it's hard to say. I mean, look, I think it's going to depend on how they do this year. I seem to think that they're going to somehow find a way to get Davante Adams at least 2 to 3 years. That's what I think. They're going to, you can do cap magic. Like you said, kick the can down the road. The cap is going up every single year for the next couple of years. Oh, pretty much every year, I would assume. So I think they're going to be able to get it done. I'm not surprised, man. I figured they were going to get this done. I figured Aaron Rodgers was going to come back. His ego wouldn't let him leave the game of football after how he went out last season, first round against the Niners, or first round that they played. I just don't think it's going to happen. Let's talk about the other wide receiver that was tagged, Chris Godwin, man.
Yeah.
Look, if they had a quarterback, I'd be excited for that, but I'm not, man. Like, here's the thing. Consistency is going to be a good thing because he's injured. He's expected to probably be back right at the start of the season next year. So if he was changing teams, there'd be a bit of an issue, but it's not like he's got the same quarterback, right? So it's going to be the same offensive system. So that's a plus, but giant question marks. Who's going to be the quarterback? It ain't going to be Kyle Trask. I don't care what Tampa says. It ain't going to happen. What's your feelings on Chris Godwin?
I think that Godwin is going to be one of those where he's tagged and then they get clarity on the quarterback situation, and then he's signed to a long-term deal before that. July was usually like July 28th, somewhere around there. They get to sign him. It's kind of in between OTAs and when camp starts. So I feel like with him, they're going to get him signed to a longer-term deal. I think he wants some clarity and lucidity with the quarterback situation, and they might have gone to him and said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to tag you. We got to figure out this quarterback situation. We want your input. We want Mike Evans' input." I think BA has about a year or two left, and they're going to hand the reins over to Leftwich. So they want to do this the right way. I think they want those guys to be the foundation. Now, Godwin's 26 years old. Mike Evans is a little bit older, but like they got a good core. Marpet retiring hurt them a little bit, but I think Godwin's going to get signed to a longer term extension.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy deserves to get paid. That's just the bottom line. He's played He's played up to that level. He deserves to get paid as a number one wide receiver in the league. And hey, he has been the last 2 years with the tag, so it is what it is. Yep. 3 tight ends were tagged. David Njoku, which was frankly a little bit surprising. The man's wanted out of Cleveland for a couple of years now. They just won't let him get the hell out. So I don't understand that one, to be honest with you. Dalton Schultz, of course, Dallas Cowboys. That one makes sense. And then Mike Gesicki out of Miami. Word on the street was that the Chargers were interested in signing Mike Gesicki, but look, that ain't going to happen because he's a Dolphin. So how do we feel about that? I mean, obviously, we like Dalton Schultz. He was a top 12 tight end last year. He showed pretty good chemistry with Dak Prescott. Mike Gesicki is essentially a big slot wide receiver, so we love that. You and Brandon were in a chat this morning talking about how apparently Amari Cooper is going to be linked to Miami, that Miami's going to go hard after him. So, how would that change things for both Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it would be a good thing. I mean, I think that what you're going to see McDaniel put together is an offense that looks a lot like what he ran with in San Francisco. So McDaniel has spent all of his time with Kyle Shanahan. He's a Shanahan disciple. So that's the system that he knows. So when you're looking at it, and Brandon and I went back and forth about this, he was trying to work out a trade Davante Adams, involving Davante Adams and Jalen Waddle. And we were just talking back and forth about the dynamics of surrounding each player, what it was going to look like. I think that what McDaniel is going to try and do is try and get Waddle into the Debo role. I'm not saying that Waddle is Debo. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. I think that what McDaniel said, though, was, hey, he's the most talented guy we have. We have to get creative with ways we get the ball into his hand. So to me, that reads, and you saw it a little bit at the end of the season last year. He was rushing a little bit. So I think Waddle is going to be the main target of that offense. I think that you have Amari Cooper playing the Brandon Ayuk role, albeit in a better, more polished version of Brandon Ayuk, a little bit more reliable receiver. I think he's going to be the main non-Waddle target. And then you have Gesicki in the George Kittle role. So I think that it's very easy to look at these pieces. Now, Gesicki isn't as physical as Kittle is, and Gesicki doesn't do as much inline blocking as Kittle does. But I think that when you look at the pieces that they have it's easy to make analogies. And I'm not necessarily one to say, okay, well, he came from San Francisco, so he's going to run the same offense that he ran in San Francisco. But because he's been with Shanahan for so long, he was part of building that offensive system out. He believes in that system. And I think that there's a lot of his fingerprints on the system that Shanahan runs. So I think that in this case, it would be kind of irresponsible not to make those analogies. So I think that Gesicki is going to be somebody, because he was inconsistent with the previous regime. Like, there were weeks where freaking Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen were outscoring him. You see this big dude lumbering down the middle of the field. You're like, with the big dude with an 8 on his back. You're like, great touchdown, Gesicki. You're like, it's Durham freaking Smythe. It's Adam Shaheen. What the heck is going on here? So I think from that situation, he's going to be a little bit more predictable. He might be cheap. He's probably one of those guys that if you stream tight end, he's going to be right on the verge of being, a tight end that's really drafted or somebody that you can stream with. So I kind of like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, Dalton Schultz, like I said, he's going to be good. Dallas is going to look interesting. Like CeeDee Lamb, the hype is on, right? But people are still reluctant to think that CeeDee Lamb can be a top wide receiver in the league. That's kind of shocking to me. I just don't get that. Like, he has literally wide receiver 1 upside in his range of outcomes. Like, he is, to me, he's like baby DeAndre Hopkins. That's how I see CeeDee Lamb's game, and it's kind of shocking to me that there's just so much hate out there.
Yeah, I think part of it is self-inflicted by what Dallas did with him. It seemed like last year he was really dependent on who else was on the field with him. Like, if Gallup was active or Ced Wilson was active, then it wasn't going to be, they weren't really going to focus on Lamb. And I don't know if that's because the defense keyed on him, pulling safeties over the top, or, doubling up on him, and that opened everybody else up. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this Dallas offense is going to look very different this year than it did last year.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's a real question.
I think it's just a thing. I don't know that it's necessarily good or necessarily bad. I think that it was a pretty productive offense last year, but it was largely unpredictable. I think it might be slightly less productive, but more predictable. So you're going to know that, like, Schultz is going to go, CD is going to go, Gallup is going to be a usable flex piece, and then whoever the running back is that week is going to be usable. I think running back is going to be where we get frustrated with this offense. I think you got to temper expectations with Dak. I don't know that you draft him with the QB1 ceiling that you drafted him with previously. He didn't run as much last year as he did in previous years. I don't know if that was because he was not as confident on his ankle or if it was by design. I'm not 100% sure. I also think
probably
that Kellen Moore,
though, right? I think it's
it could. Both. Yeah. I also think that Kellen Moore is now coaching for a head coaching position. So the way that he runs this offense, his ability to be consistent, his ability to close out games is really going to dictate whether or not he lands up in a head coaching spot in the 22-23 offseason cycle. So I think that's what you're going to see out of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. I'm going to pivot real quick because we totally got distracted. I do want to talk about the current landscape in Denver. Okay, so a question for you. Close your eyes. It's the end of the 2022 season. Playoffs are over. Who's more likely to have helped you win that championship? Is it going to be Courtland Sutton, my boy, or Jerry Judy? Who do you want on your team in fantasy football next year?
I think it's going to be Jerry Judy. Interesting.
Okay. Just because you think like he's the Tyler Lockett connection. Is Jerry Judy better than Tyler Lockett? I mean, I guess the jury's still out on that, but he's certainly a better prospect than Tyler Lockett was.
I think prospect-wise, I do think he's better. I've never been a huge Lockett guy. He's way too streaky for me. Me too. He's more somebody that if you're in if you're playing in a setup where you start 3 wide receivers and 2-3 flexes, I'm fine with him in one of the flex spots, maybe in your wide receiver 3 spot. In a typical ESPN standard setup where it's 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, Lockett's a guy that I generally stayed away from because of his streakiness. In a larger setup, he can win you weeks, but in a smaller one like that, he can really. Tim Patrick, get the heck out of here!
Damn song, Tim Patrick.
It's 8 a.m. out west. Matt's clearly still drunk. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's going to be Jerry
still in the veins.
Too many popsicles last night for you, sir. I think Jerry Judy is going to be more predictable, more reliable. I think that you're going to see Sutton win you weeks. He's going to have huge weeks where they're focusing on the run game and Jerry Judy. But I think Judy's going to be more reliable.
I love my sweet, beautiful child, Cortland Sutton, man. Look, Judy's still going to continue to go ahead of him in drafts. I'm going to fade that ADP, and it's still too early to tell exactly like where they're going to shake out in the next probably couple of weeks to a month. But Cortland Sutton is definitively going after Jerry Judy, and I'm happy to go with Court, just especially at that ADP.
Yeah, for me, it depends on how big the spread gets. If they're around apart, I'll probably hedge Judy. But if they end up being a round and a half, 2 rounds apart, then I think that this is an offense that you're going to want a piece of. Alberto's a hot name because they shipped Fan out of town. Obviously, Javante's a hot name, regardless of whether or not they bring back Mel Gordon. Russ is going to be a hot name. So really, it's going to be about what's the cheapest piece that you think is going to deliver.
I'm still definitively on that Melvin Gordon's going to be back. The way that you're talking about it, I love Javonte Williams. I have him all over my dynasty teams. I'm not convinced that Melvin Gordon is going to be gone. They need another running back. Who are they going to get? Are they going to go free agent? Or are they going to, pay up for a free agent like Melvin Gordon? Or are they going to get somebody in the draft? It's a pretty deep draft, but, there's that sight unseen type mentality with these rookies. So I think Melvin's coming back, man, especially for us.
I do. I was listening to on Sirius, Adam Kaplan was on the morning show with John Hanson, and he said that even if they do bring back Mel Gordon, it's going to be in a true backup capacity. So you're not gonna have the fuckery and antics that you had with the Fangio regime where they're splitting him 50-50 just for the sake of splitting him 50-50. It's going to be Javonte is the one, Gordon is the backup, and it's probably going to be 65-35, 70-30, 75-25, somewhere in that neighborhood where it's more a true starter handcuff role.
Here's my question. Why? They were just as productive pretty much when they're on the field. Like, yes, I know Javonte with the missed tackles, et cetera. Like, he looked electric on the field, but Melvin Gordon was good. Why not try to keep Javonte healthy if they're going to win games? Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, are we just forecasting here? I get it. Adam Kaplan's he's often more right than he is wrong. But
it didn't make a ton of sense to me. Like, I think that Gordon's going to want to go somewhere where he's got a shot to win and where he's going to have a shot to contribute. Now, if he thinks that, he can still contribute if they're going to, but see, the tough part is that the second running back in that system is going to be, it's a tough sell that it's going to be dynasty viable or even real NFL viable. You have 2 legit, if not 3 legit passing targets in Sutton, in Judy, and in Alberto / Tim Patrick. Then you got Javonte as the starter. Yeah, and you got KJ Hamler too. Yeah, I forgot about him. That's a good call there from Flex Matt. Thank you much, sir. So it's tough. So there is the Wisconsin connection there with Gordon and Russ. There could be a little bit of recruiting going on, saying, "Hey, dude, let's go. Let's bring it back here. It's going to be fun. Let's contend for a title." But I don't know. I see both sides of it, and if I hadn't heard that from Kaplan that he was going to come back in a backup capacity, I wouldn't necessarily believe it. But I don't know. It's a troubling situation as a Javonte Williams owner.
Yeah, I don't think KJ Hamler is going to break out simply because they've got a solid run game. How do you define a breakout? If he has 700 yards, maybe 3 touchdowns, is that a breakout? I wouldn't think it. If you're defining a breakout as 1,000 reception yards, I think there's almost zero chance, barring an injury with one of these other starters. I don't think KJ Hamler is somebody you should be going after. Now, look, if you're in a best ball and you're in round 15, 16, and you want some of these flyer, high-end, you're looking for a wide receiver that can pop in a week, yeah, KJ Hamler's one of those guys because he's got rust now, but I wouldn't bank on it. He's not somebody I'm drafting in my redraft leagues. No way.
No, he's also coming off an ACL, so he's going to start the season a little bit slower.
Exactly. And look, that's what he was. He was a burner, right? But he's only 178 pounds, 5'11". He had 4.32 40-yard dash. Again, he's a burner. He can open up the field, but I just don't see it. It's one of those. We say it all the time. He's one of these guys. He's better for a real NFL team than he really is for fantasy football. So I wouldn't bank my fantasy football fortunes on KJ Hamler. Mike, we've been doing a lot of talking. Should we go ahead and talk about some of our favorite free agents of 2022?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's go. Okay, so we're already at 20 minutes. We want to avoid a 7-hour-long podcast here. So let's quickly talk about the quarterbacks, okay?
Yep.
So top of the list, we got guys like Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Marcus Mariota, and Mitchell Trubisky. Those are the 4 guys that are getting a lot of buzz. if you're a team and you need a quarterback, which one of these players do you trust the most?
Trubisky, I think. So Trubisky was 29 and 21 as a starter with Chicago. He had a couple good seasons, had a couple good runs. We saw that the downfall of that Chicago team was Nagy and the offensive system and the structure that he put in place. I also do not think they were extremely strong on the personnel side. I think that that Pace was not the best GM to have in there. So he garnered high praise from McDermott coming out of Buffalo. And I just think that people are going to buy into the fact that, he was behind Josh Allen for a year. He spent a year with Brian Daboll. It would make sense for him if New York truly is in a full rebuild. It would make sense for them to move on from Daniel Jones, trade him for a pick, and to sign Trubisky. I don't know that that's going to happen. You might see. I've heard Trubisky linked to teams like Pittsburgh. That makes sense to me. He's a mobile quarterback. Tomlin said he wants a mobile quarterback. He makes sense there. He's experienced. He's got 50 NFL games under his belt. So there's not that run up in that learning curve. He's the top guy for me. And then, with Winston, he's coming off the ACL. Mariota, I kind of like Mariota a little bit. I read somewhere
I like
about him. Yeah,
I'm kind of a Mariota truther. But, yeah, I mean, this one's going to be interesting. I mean, all these guys are going to get signed. And I think for them to sign on the team, they're going to want to go to a team where they've got an opportunity to compete. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to be the starter, but an opportunity to compete. And there's not a ton of teams out there. I think Jameis Winston goes back with New Orleans. It'd be silly not to.
Yeah,
they're probably getting him cheap. He knows the system. To your point, like he's going to be recovering, so he's going to miss a lot of the offseason. That makes the most sense to me. Teddy Bridgewater, he's boring. Where's he going? Or where should he be going?
Away.
Away.
Away. He's not. The guy kind of got a bad shape because of the knee injury that he had, but I was never hugely high on him as a draft prospect. I thought that he was kind of mediocre as a draft prospect coming out. I was kind of surprised Minnesota took him as highly as they did. He seems an odd guy that you would want to build a franchise around. He had a decent amount of mobility before that catastrophic knee injury, but he was never that polished as a passer. He's a dink and dunk guy. He's an Alex Smith low ADOT guy. Dump off to the backs, nothing, not really going to sling it deep. I just think that he's better suited as a backup. And people have tried to trot him out as a bridge quarterback for the last 2 years. They tried to bridge him in Carolina. They walked away from him there. They tried to bridge him in Denver, and he quote unquote won the starting job. But did he really win it, or did Drew Lock just mess it up? Like it was a disaster. So
yeah, I mean,
I think that he'll
for the
settle
skill positions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it really was. I think that he'll end up settling with somebody as a backup after that first initial wave of signings are done. I don't know that he'll get signed in that first wave.
I sure hope so, man. Like, yeah, I mean, look, if you're an NFL team again, he's a perfect backup because you can trust him to run the offense, win you a couple of games. But is he going to win you games? No. Like, he's not going to be the reason you win games, and we saw it. Like, the experiment is over, right? I mean, it didn't work in Carolina. It didn't work in Denver. The dream is dead. Let's move on.
Dude, send him back to New Orleans. Let him be in there while Jameis is recovering. He played what he did well as the backup there. I don't know if Taysom Hill, obviously, I don't think Taysom Hill has over Dennis Allen, whatever he had over Sean Payton, those incriminating pictures that he had or whatever. But I don't know if we're going to see Taysom Hill back as the backup there. I hope not, because it's an absolute disaster for all the skill positions. But I think that Teddy B back to New Orleans makes sense. And then they draft somebody. They draft a developmental guy late.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on to the running back position. Let's get a little bit more sex appeal. And what better sex appeal than a guy like, Leonard Fournette, baby. Playoff Lenny, Uncle Lenny. We love him. A lot of people hate him. Leonard Fournette, man, I think that he is definitely one of these top running backs. Like, if you're going to go and sign one of these veteran players, would you rather have Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette?
Leonard Fournette, 100%.
Yeah, me too. So this is interesting. I could see a team like for me, like a team like Miami would be really smart to sign a player like Leonard Fournette. I mean, everybody's talking about this is where like a great landing spot for a Breece Hall or Isaiah Spiller, like one of these top end running backs. But I think they'd be smart. Don't spend your draft capital there. Go out and get one of these Uncle Lenny type players. And I mean, I don't want him back in Tampa. I think that'd be a disaster. But going to a team like Miami, to me, that would be perfect.
Yeah, they could go to Miami. I could also see him landing somewhere like Buffalo or Atlanta.
Yep.
I don't know that they're going to bring Patterson back. in Atlanta. Leonard makes sense as a true running back down there. Fill in there. Obviously, the Ridley situation there puts everything in flux. But I also don't know if
Atlanta likes him though. Atlanta's been talking about bringing Patterson back, or at least there's been murmurs. Like the coaching staff talks about how much they love him, how much he embraced just the role that they gave him last year. Why wouldn't they bring him back? Thinking him cheap
because of the price he's going to command. And I mean,
what do you
the
think
guy's like, I have absolutely no idea. But if they're talking about Christian Kirk getting $13 million a season, I would imagine that Patterson will be somewhere in that neighborhood. 8, 10, 11, somewhere around there.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that. And Atlanta is Atlanta in a win now situation? I don't think that they are. No. Ryan's about to get expensive. They're probably going to trade Ryan away. So I mean, maybe it's going to be more them selling Fournette that he should come there. Hey, this is our plan for the future. This is who we're going to draft. I actually kind of like if he gets there. I don't know that he will get there, but I would like to see Kenny Pickett go to Atlanta. They play more than half their games inside of a dome. Even when they're playing New Orleans within conference, they're in dome. The weather's a little dicey in Tampa, a little dicey in Carolina, but I feel like that Atlanta would be a good fit. I also feel like Willis would be a good fit down in Atlanta. He kind of is a little reminiscent of Tannehill. Pretty mobile, not the most polished passer, but I think that Arthur Smith could scheme it up and have him be successful there. I don't think Willis will get there. I think Atlanta's drafting 8th this year, and I don't think Willis will be there at 8. So I don't know that he'll get down there, but I could see one of those guys going there, and then they trade Matt Ryan to somebody who is a legit quarterback away.
Is Seattle taking a quarterback now? They have to, right? With some of the draft picks.
Yeah, I think that Seattle's actually a good landing spot for Mariota. He's going to be cheap. Oh, okay. He's going to be in the 8, 10, $12 million range. He hasn't done much since he landed into Las Vegas. Seattle is 50 million under the cap, 49.6, somewhere around there. So while it looks like they're in a rebuild, if you get somebody like Mariota, who is a pro, who can run those RPO principles, and I fully agree with Brandon on this, that they never should have traded away Wilson. They should have fired Carroll. They should have fired Carroll. They should have fired Snyder, and they should have built around Wilson. Wilson has 6 to 7 good years left in him. He's only 33 years old. He's proven that he can win. He's proven that he can perform at a high level. He's proven that he's tough, resilient. He's gritty. I mean, that should have been a season-ending injury last year, and he came back in like week 10 or 11. So to me, it was a no-brainer, which is why the organization did the exact opposite. I think what makes sense to us the most as people on the outside looking in is often the thing that doesn't make sense for the organization. So I think Carroll's a cancer in that locker room, to be 100% honest. Like, I get that he's a quote unquote players coach, but like, dude, this is the modern NFL. And after the way Russ Wilson started at the beginning of the 2020 season, for Carroll to throttle everything because he just didn't like to win that way. Like, I mean,
disaster.
That loses you locker rooms, and that loses you fan bases. And Matt and Brandon can attest to this much better than I can. Like, if I was a fan, I would be livid that they kept Carroll and walked Wilson. I would be absolutely livid. So, but anyway, back to Mariota to Seattle. They can build around him. It could be like a 2-week rebuild where like Wilson was gone. They got all this draft capital. They can fill through the draft, and they can draft offense, and they can sign defense, and they're right back in it, baby.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's still a tough division, but it's smart coaching. Are we confident they're smart? I don't know. We'll see that. Where the hell is Rashad Penny? Speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, where's Rashad Penny going to go? Like, he's not going to be signed back. Can we trust him? Like, yes, he had a decent ending to the season last year, but can he actually be trusted to be a RB1 on a team? I don't think so. I'm not confident.
I think he's a 1A. It wouldn't. So this is based off of years of watching the way that Doug Peterson operates. It wouldn't surprise me to see Rashad Penny or a Sony Michel end up in Jacksonville.
Stop it.
Dude, when Doug Peterson had Miles Sanders and chose violence, brought in Jordan Howard, ran Jordan Howard at the goal line. Like, Doug Peterson woke up every day and chose violence over the success that Miles Sanders could have brought him. So it wouldn't surprise me to see somebody like that go down there. I don't know that they're going to be a high priority just because teams are hesitant to pay running backs big contracts. Both those guys have injury history, but if you're going to put them in a complimentary role, a 1B role, then what's it, $5 million a year? I'd roll the dice for $5 million a year on Penny or Michelle.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, you mentioned Sony Michel. He's not going to be a Ram next year, which frankly is a good thing for Cam Akers. I'm still
Yeah.
believing that. I mean, the Rams don't have a lot of picks, but I think they could certainly look at one of these running backs late. I think that's interesting. Marlon Mack, just to touch on him quickly, I think he's going to be a decent, 1B in a committee, if that. Maybe just the RB2 in a committee. Does Marlon Mack have what it takes to be an RB1? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, let's move on. Ronald Jones, let's not even talk about him because not somebody to care about. James Conner's an interesting player, okay? Because he had such an insane season last year with the touchdowns. If your team, James Conner is 26 only, which is amazing. Leonard Fournette's 27. Who are you taking on a 2-year deal? Taking James Conner or Leonard Fournette?
I think I would lean Leonard Fournette just a little bit.
I would too.
Fournette seems to be a little bit sturdier. Granted, he is a year older, so he's a year closer to that cliff, wherever that cliff arbitrarily is. It seems like it's sliding. It was 30, then it's 28. Now some say it's 26. I feel slightly better about Fournette than I do about Conner.
But I'm pretty confident with these guys. Like they're still continuing to fall in drafts. And look, if you go wide receiver early, which we're starting to pivot in that direction, I don't mind taking Leonard Fournette and James Conner around 5 or 6. Like that's okay build for your team, because no matter where these guys are going to go, I think you're going to have a role in the offense. I'd love to see James Conner back in Arizona. Like that would be fantastic. But I just don't know. Arizona, man, we've talked about it in ad nauseum. They're a confounding team. They should be good, but they never are good. It's mind-boggling to me. But Chase Edmonds, another guy. So Arizona's max exodus out of there. Kyler Murray's going to be going to Houston. Oh, just kidding. Chase Edmonds, he's another player, but same thing. He's more of a satellite back. When he's using a committee, like a 50-50 committee, he is productive when he gets the ball, but he's not somebody that can lead a backfield. So, I mean, look, there's some pretty decent talent, but we've gone through it. Like, I just participated in the RotoWire mock draft. Mr. Sislowski was kind enough to invite me into a den of lions, a pool of sharks. Say it as you will. I went Kenny Pickett 1. It was a super flex draft out of the 9th spot. I went Kenny Pickett 1, and then I hammered the hell out of running backs, getting Zamir White, Dameon Pierce, players like that, because, man, maybe it's just, rookie fever, but I think that the R&B class is there's a few little bit of sizzle at the top, but there's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of depth players, and I think there's going to be a big turnout. Like, I'm looking at this mass list of just old nasty, like Devontae Booker's, Philip Lindsay's, Jalen Richard's, David Johnson's. Like, there's going to be a massive changeover at running back, and this is going to be a good year where a lot of these young athletic running backs are coming into the league. Some of them are a little bit older, 23-year-old running backs, a little bit like questionable, but look, they're going to turn over, and running back is one of the most replaceable positions in the league. So if I'm a team, I'm probably going to build my running back depth through the draft this year versus signing any of these free agents, like old nasty free, like Tariq Cohen. Like, are you going to pay Tariq Cohen more than $2 million a year? Like, absolutely not, right? It doesn't make any sense. So that's it. It's not really exciting. Where there's some excitement and where there's some sizzle in the free agency class this year, Mike, is the wide receiver position. So we know Devontae Adams was tagged. We know Chris Godwin was tagged. But there's still some good players out there. There's Allen Robinson. There's Will Fuller. There's Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, excuse me. Who do you like as your favorite receiver?
So I got a couple that I like. I'm slightly worried about Allen Robinson. I don't know if it was a disconnect between him and the coaching staff last year, but something was off about his game. He was supposed to have the best season he's ever had, because Dalton, whether it was Dalton or Fields, was by far the best quarterback he had ever really played. Well, we thought was the best quarterback he'd ever played with. So maybe it's the deficiencies of that coaching staff that led to it. Maybe it was an attitude thing. I think the talent is still there, but he's 29. He's pushing up there in age. Yeah. To me, a guy that I'm really, really excited about, and I hope that he lands in Philadelphia, is DJ Chark.
Yes, baby.
that dude is talented. He's exciting. He flashes. His was a bone injury. It wasn't a ligament injury. It was a broken ankle. So you're not really worried about about lingering into the next season. You're not really worried much about the rehab process. Like it's a different injury and it's a different rehabilitation process. So I feel good about it. You get him somewhere like Philadelphia, I don't know with Wentz now, you would want him in Washington, but somewhere where you need a big receiver on the outside to take pressure and attention off of a 1A. I think that's where he fits. I don't know that he's a true X, but I think that if you're looking for an X, you could do a lot worse than him.
A team like Philadelphia, like you and I have been talking about this. Like I love DJ Chark. He's one of my favorite players. We just saw the combine, and last show we were talking about the speed score. So at his combine, he ran a 4.34 40-yard dash, which was a speed score 115 because he's 199 pounds at 6'3". The man is an athletic freak. He's still only where's his age? He's still only 25 years old, so he'll be about close to 26. But the age apex for wide receivers is 27 years old. So the man is just approaching his age apex season. To your point, it wasn't a ligament injury. It wasn't a soft tissue injury, which we love, right? He can come back. He'll be fully healed when he's cleared to play. And he's going to be the kind of player that can make a difference on a team. The Jacksonville Jaguars were beyond dysfunctional last year. But even before that, they weren't exactly a great team, right? So I love DJ Chark. To me, that would be absolutely perfect. It'd be great. They get Quez Watkins to stretch the field. They get Devontae Smith. You put him a little bit more in the slot. You get DJ Chark on the outside. You actually use Miles Sanders. All of a sudden, this Philadelphia offense looks pretty disgusting. And
Dallas Goedert in the mix a little bit too.
You get a little Dallas Goedert in there. Use all three of your first-round picks on defense or O-line, which is also two of the deeper parts of the draft this year. The Eagles are all of a sudden like a fun team. They're an exciting team again. And look, that NFC East is wide open. And I think it's the Eagles to take if they really want it.
Yeah. Which means that Howie Roseman will take all three of those first-round picks, dump them down the toilet, and trade them for Deshaun Watson. Oh, God. Anyway,
that would be a mistake. That would be an absolute mistake.
It would be a mistake because I don't think that Philadelphia is a quarterback away. I think that he needs to go to a team that is a quarterback away. And if things are as fractured in Arizona as some of the reports are indicating they are, Arizona would make sense. Seattle might make sense, but it's just tough because of the cap situation. I think he's on the books for north of $30 million each of the next 3 years. So he's got to go to the right team, or he's got to be willing to restructure when he gets there. So you look for a team like that. He would make sense in Tampa if they could get him down there. I just don't know how they'd get him down there.
What about, speaking of Arizona, what about Christian Kirk? Apparently him and Josh Allen were having dinner together. We talked about, we think we both agree that whether or not Cole Beasley gets a trade or not, because he did request a trade and the Bills allowed him to go and see if he can seek a trade. Fine. Okay. There is a ton of slot wide receiver depth this year in the draft, like the Jahan Dotsons of the world. I think it'd be a mistake to pay $13 million. And word is Evan Ingram is also being courted, I should say, by the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills can't just go out and sign all these high-priced free agents. Like, that doesn't make sense. So Christian Kirk to the Bills, well, it'd be sweet. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's going to happen. Not at $13 million anyways.
No, it'd be a much more exciting NFL move than fantasy move, to be 100% honest.
What do you think Jamison Crowder is going to demand? Like, I still think he's a viable slot wide receiver. He's got the experience. Whenever he plays, he's good. He's just injured a lot.
Yeah, I like Crowder. I've always liked Crowder.
I do too.
He got a bad. I hoped that he would have ended up sticking when he went to Baltimore and he failed the physical or something like that. Or it was something that didn't work out in Baltimore when he came out of Washington. Because I think
he was going to be like one of the highest paid players. And this was like at the start of free agency, he got signed, and then it was kind of like, this is not a good look. So he goes up, he fails his physical, and whoops, I guess it didn't work out. Yeah, I remember that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. So he'll end up somewhere. He'll be fantasy viable for 7-8 weeks out of the season. He'll be hurt the other 9-10 weeks out of the season. Good luck figuring out which weeks he's viable. It's I hate it because I like him. I like him as a player. Like, he's a guy that's easy to root for. But it's just tough from a fantasy standpoint. Better NFL move than fantasy move.
Speaking of tough from a fantasy standpoint, the man didn't have working fingers last year. Will Fuller He's a free agent again. Has the ship sailed on Will Fuller? Is the question.
No, because he'll try to
27
weasel his
years
way
old.
into wherever Watson goes. That's why he went to
Yeah, you think
Miami.
so?
He thought Watson was going to Miami. I firmly believe that's the whole reason he went down there. And then when Watson didn't show, he was like, my fingers hurt, my back hurts, I have a runny nose, I got a toe. Like he figured out ways not to get on the field because I don't think he really wanted to play without Watson. So wherever Watson goes, he'll end up. Very unexciting.
I can't really say I blame him at all.
No, he thrived under Watson. He won me some leagues.
There you go. Michael Gallup, it sounds like he's going to be back. I mean, the writing's on the wall, right? Especially if they cut Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup's going to be back in Dallas. I think that's fine. A few guys at the bottom here have got Russell Gage, Braxton Berrios are both UFAs. Both, I mean, look, they both played well. Again, they're slot wide receivers. It's pretty deep in the draft, but I think they've proven that they should be signed on teams as reliable slot wide receivers. Again, it's that black box idea where you don't know what you're going to get out of these rookies, whereas you've seen production from Russell Gage. You've seen that he could be the leading wide receiver on a team if he needed to be. I mean, for what it is. And Braxton Berrios, when he was healthy, was an absolute G. So I think they're both going to be signed. Do you think Braxton Berrios goes back to the Jets?
I think he does, especially if they're going to let Crowder walk. I think so. And Berrios is huge in the return game. I mean, if you're in a league that gets return points, Berrios is a money pickup. And he did well. Honestly, he did well from a production standpoint when Crowder was out of the lineup. So it makes sense. Zach Wilson. It seems like Zach Wilson trusts him. So yeah, why not?
Fantastic. All right, that's all the wide receivers I wanted to really talk about. Is there anybody I missed that you wanted to talk about before we move on to tight end to close out the show? Juju. Oh yeah, let's talk about Juju. Okay.
Yeah.
So he went back to Pittsburgh on a 1-year deal. I think that was a mistake, especially because allegedly he was being quartered by Kansas City. I mean, the reason he signed a 1-year deal is because he wanted to prove a year. He got hurt, so he couldn't really prove anything. Yeah. But also the cap, right? The cap's gone up. So Kansas City needs a solid wide receiver too. He's a solid wide receiver or a slot wide receiver. He can play on the outside. He's not as effective on the outside, but him, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, immediately there's an upgrade. Like Byron Pringle, he's a UFA. It doesn't make sense for him to come back.
No.
What am I missing here? Like the man should just sign and move on with everybody's lives. Like he'll be effective.
He should. Yeah, and I know that there was some talk. Brandon was big on the OBJ to Kansas City talk before he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. I think OBJ will end up back with the Rams. He'll take a discount to do so. So that it makes Juju makes the most sense to go there. I heard some talk that he would end up in Las Vegas and that he made sense in Las Vegas, but I don't know that he really makes sense.
No.
Renfro and Waller play inside, and I don't know that Juju is good enough to play outside as a legit one. He's better as a complementary piece.
Well, Zay Jones is a UFA also. We didn't really talk about him, but I think he's back in Las Vegas. Give the man credit. He was a rookie that I was super excited. My buddy's a huge Buffalo Bills fan. When the Bills drafted him, I was excited. I was sending him texts like, you got yourself a legit wide receiver. He had the whole pants off situation, which I don't know if it was mental health. It was drinking a little bit too much. I don't know what that situation was, but look, it unfortunately it put a camper in his career development. Teams just really didn't trust him. But I would say the last 2 seasons, he's had pretty good showing out in Las Vegas. And it makes sense for me that he signs a cheap deal. They keep him, they retain him. It worked. He's got chemistry with Derek Carr, assuming Derek Carr isn't part of the trade options going to Houston in exchange for Deshaun Watson. I don't think that's going to happen personally. It doesn't make sense to me. But Zay Jones.
Yeah. The man can levitate.
He can levitate.
Let's go.
Look, I need that Dua Lipa drop. Levitate. All right, let's hit up the tight ends. We'll close up the show. Zach Ertz had his moments last year. He was a nice little touchdown target. He had 5 last year, but he's getting up there. He's 31 years old. There's also Rob Gronkowski. He's 32 years old. CJ Uzoma is 29 years old. It doesn't sound like Gronkowski wants to retire at this point.
Yeah. The talk in the early offseason was that Brady was going to San Francisco and he was dragging Gronk with him. We also heard rumblings of Gronk to Buffalo. That makes sense because Gronk is from Buffalo.
We've heard Gronk said he wanted to play with Burrow. Like, so maybe he goes and replaces CJ Uzoma in Cincinnati. Like,
I
that's
would
a
not. I would not
possibility,
hate
too.
that.
No, that would be pretty nice, right? So Rob Gronkowski, he is falling in early best balls. I think now's the time to go draft him. You can get him in literally rounds 11, 12, 13 in your best
That's
balls.
crazy.
So I think that's absolutely crazy. One of the strategies I've basically been employing, like I've been doing a lot, right? So I've gotten a few Darren Walls, I've gotten a few Mark Andrews, but I'm generally fading tight end. And if I don't take one of those top early tight ends, I wait pretty much to the double-digit rounds because, look, all you're banking on is upside. So if you can go get a Rob Gronkowski, maybe double up, go Gronkowski, Cole Kmet. We talked about Cole Kmet as one of my favorite later tight end plays. I think that's solid. And then you can go back in like round 16. And if you want to get a third tight end, get Trey McBride. Like that is an absolute solid tight end build, I think. And out of all these guys, I think the guy who should be the top suited UFA is Gronkowski.
What about Gronk to San Diego? How nice would that be?
Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'm sorry,
because,
LA. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Chargers were trying to go after Mike Gesicki, allegedly. So that would make a lot of sense. Jared Cook's gone, and he's not going to come back. He was a little bit disappointing last year. I had Jared Cook all over a lot of my dynasty teams, right? Especially his tight end premiums, because again, I'm cheap when it comes to tight end. I was so excited when he signed with the Chargers last year, and then he was disappointing. It is what it is.
All the Donald Parham truthers just had a mild coronary at the sound of Gronk to Los Angeles to the Chargers, but it makes sense. Guy wants to go where he can win. You got a young stud quarterback. I mean, Herbert, Burrow, they're both gunslingers. They're both swaggy. LA feels like a Gronk town. Tampa felt like a Gronk town.
Yeah.
LA feels like a Gronk town. Why not?
I mean, LA is the Gronk town. Maybe Vegas. What about that would never happen, right? Like
back to New England?
No, back to Vegas. Hook up with Josh McDaniels. You get a Darren Waller, Rob Gronkowski. Hunter Renfrow. How is this not being discussed?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that be a really good fit?
That would be. Because Waller could play the Hernandez role. Gronk can play the Gronk role.
Yeah,
you got Waller. You got Renfrow who can play the Edelman, Wes Welker, whoever the sock guy was there. Yeah, that's amazing.
Why not?
I never thought about that.
Yeah, his salary last year is $8 million, so he'll probably get $8-9 million this year, which is not bad, right? When you look at something like what Hunter Henry was making last year, Jonnu Smith.
Yeah,
I kind of like that. You go get like a pass catching option. You're not spending up for one of these cheap, nasty wide receivers. I like that a lot.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, clip that up and put it out.
Yeah, we do. We definitely got to clip that puppy up. All right, brother. So I'm dying here. I'm starting to cough more and more. So we should probably end the show a little bit early here. But is there anybody that we missed you want to talk about, or just in general? I mean, we didn't talk about the Carson Wentz trade at all. We didn't talk about the Mike Williams signing. Anything to get off your chest before we close out for the day?
No, I mean, I think both of those were, they kind of, the Carson Wentz thing is a big meh. Like he was largely unexciting last year in Indy. He did have the 27-7 touchdown to interception ratio. So in a controlled setting, he can do well, but he does not do well when he gets pressure. Washington does decent at keeping their quarterbacks away from pressure. So my thing with Wentz is it takes a really, really specific set of circumstances to conflate to give him success. And then even when all that comes together, he can still make some bonehead decisions and cost you games. I mean, he lost 29-11. He lost to the freaking Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the word coming out of Indy was that Irsay had made and Gregson had made their decision on him before that last game, and then that was kind of that kind of buried him in Frank Reich's mind. But I don't know. Reich pushed hard to get him there. Reich was his biggest fan in Philly. Reich was the one that wanted him in Philly. Reich was the one that wanted him there. If you got to believe, if they had won that game, gone 10-7, gone to the playoffs, even if they go out in the first round, like a first round playoff loss is much better than being at home week one of the playoffs.
Last year, the Indianapolis Colts were the San Francisco 49ers. They were a team that was getting hot. Yes, they had a slow start, or a slow end to the season, but that's because they lost the last two games. If they won that last game, people wouldn't have cared about that second to last game. They would have been in the playoffs. This whole Big Ben, like the Steelers had no business in the playoffs last year. And I think we'd be talking a lot different. I don't think Carson Wentz is traded because once you're in the show, they've got a good defense. They had an amazing running game. They've got the best running back in the game of football right now, as far as I'm concerned. They could have easily won. And when you win a playoff game, that saves jobs, man. And he didn't win. He couldn't get into the damn playoffs. He couldn't beat the abysmal Jacksonville Jaguars to close out the season.
Good for Trevor Lawrence, though. Putting those guys on, saying, you know what, let's go spoil this for a division opponent.
That's what
I do think. Yeah, absolutely, it does. Especially, I have a decent amount of Trevor Lawrence. I was into him. I bought in that he was a phenomenal, a borderline generational prospect. I do think that it opens up the path for Jimmy G. So, they got some twos back from Washington. Word on the street coming out of San Francisco was that it would take twos to get Jimmy G from there. So I think that makes sense. Even if they got to pay 2 twos to get him, they don't have the one because the conditional, the 22 conditional turned into the one because of the playing time that Wentz logged this year. So Philly has Indy's one. That was a fun Carson Wentz tracker that the Philly sports media had up on the sides of all their websites. That was celebration the day that he hit his 75%. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You need to replace talent with talent. And for whatever Carson Wentz was, he was still a starting caliber quarterback in the league. Mm-hmm. You have to hope they have a plan, and maybe it's during the draft. But guess what? None of these top quarterbacks are going to make it to the second round, and they don't really have any ammo to move up to the first round. It doesn't make sense. So it's going to have to be
Jimmy
through
G
trade.
makes the most sense.
I think Jimmy G makes the most sense. So, all right, brother, let's end it there. What are the good people finding?
All right. On Twitter at Mike_Dickinson, talking trash, posting gifts too. I'm a good gift poster.
There you go. I'm, of course, Flex Shane. You can follow me on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for being here. We love you. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Comment. Interact with us on Twitter. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And guess what? We are on TikTok. So you can't say you can't find us because we're everywhere. So hit us up. We love talking to you. It's why we do it, man. We're passionate about this game of fantasy football. We're passionate about the game of football, and we want to talk shit. And Mike Dickinson is really good at talking shit. So hit him up on Twitter. So I'm Mike. For Brandon, I'm Flex Shane, and we are the Flex Network.
This is the Flex Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody.